All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the regular meeting of the West Sacramento City Council and the West Sacramento Redevelopment Successor Agency and West Sacramento Financing Authority, January 18th. We had no closed session this evening. Let's go ahead and start the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. And Mr. Tuttle, would you lead us? All right, thank you. The mayor's in Washington, D.C. now with the U.S. Conference of Mayors. We're hearing reports as he's doing work there, and I'm sure we'll have a full report when he gets back. So the first item is item 1A, presentations on matter by the public or matters not on the agenda. So these are items that are not agendized, but folks just want to get up and say a couple words. It looks like we have a couple, 3 folks who want to say something. If you'd like to speak, there's yellow cards back there for any agenda item, and bring those up, and we'll get you up here. So the first person is Forest Gardens.
We got some weather out there. Hey there, I'm the mobile home guy, and thanks for listening to me a couple of months ago about rent control. This 30 minutes of fame isn't about me, but it's about the awesome services that I'm getting from the city. Mr. Aaron Laurel had a chance to come out a couple of times to our community meetings and really help facilitate bringing a connection between city services and the residents of the mobile home park. Should we start from scratch, or should I walk back?
No.
Thank you. Okay. So Aaron Laurel has just been totally integral with us bridging the mobile home community with city services. He's directed us to countless resources. The guy's wonderful. If I threw him in the air, he would turn into sunshine. And we could really use that on a day like today. Moreover, Officer Ronaldo is an awesome guy. He helps us with our Neighborhood Watch program, and he has made it out solidly for over 2 years. The guy comes in on his days off or on his off hours, after you've been serving the community for like the last 8 hours, and then spend another 2 hours with about 40 residents, and then translating everything we were saying from English to Spanish to reach everybody in the community. The guy needs a raise. I'm just, if I can just say that twice, the guy needs a raise. Sergeant Kenny is also really cool. He's been helping us get the Neighborhood Watch up and going, and he's also responsive as all get out. I've sent him an email like on a Saturday night, and he's replied back in like 5 seconds. And then I put something on the Facebook page of West Sacramento, and he replies back to that too. And I'm like, you need a cape. Like, how many different hats are you wearing for this town? Fourth shout out is to Dana with Yolo County Office of Emergency Services. She had a chance to come out last week to talk to us about emergency preparedness for mobile home parks. And so one of the inherent dangers of our parks is that we have one exit and one entrance, and the evacuation plans can get a little staticky because the exits that surround the parks are often chained. And so we can't get out if there's an emergency because, as she recommended, we should all just get bolt cutters because we have to wait for either the manager or first responders to unlock the gates in order for us to get out. So that's a dovetail into Rebecca, who also works for the fire department. And she said that if the mobile homes were ran like apartment buildings and outside of HCD's jurisdiction, she would require 2 emergency exits for facilities of our size. And so she's been integral with working with the state fire marshal and in Aaron's office and the fire department to figure out how we can improve safety in mobile home parks. What else is there? Oh, last but not least, Assemblymember McCarty's office has also come to our meetings every single time. So it's like we've got these grassroots efforts where we've got our elected officials sending out field representatives to help mediate and moderate contentious things between residents and managers, and they've had a really awesome objective view on balancing those things. So, 15 seconds. I got a sick kid at home, so I'm going to run and watch you guys from the house if I can make it back with all this weather. Anyway, thank you, Officer Ronaldo.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gardens. All right, Nancy Woodsbury.
Hello, it's a pleasure to be here tonight. I am Nance Woodbury. I'm the chapter director for the Yolo County American Civil Liberties Union. We're a reactivated chapter, and I'm so excited that we made it across the causeway tonight, despite the weather. And we're here to connect and engage with West Sacramento and many of the activities related to civil liberties or civil rights issues that your communities and neighborhoods are challenged with. And we are very grateful that West Sacramento wants to engage with our chapter. Before me now are two questions that our chapter and some of our constituents here in Yolo County, specific to West Sacramento, have brought forward to us. In Yolo County, there's an increase in the use of gang injunction. As you know, it's underway in Woodland, not yet in Davis. And via the Public Records Act, we respectfully ask if the City Council could guide us in terms of gathering information related to the data and maybe some of the outcomes-driven reports or studies that led the City Council to decide to enforce a gang injunction. And secondly, do you have any sort of status data, since I guess the injunction has been in place for 10 years? I mean, have you been prospectively following any of the arrests and the type of arrests, any of the outcomes of some of the youth who were arrested? We know this is a national concern. Some of the priorities of the ACLU are always to guard and protect everyone's civil liberties, but at the same time, we respect law enforcement. We understand that safety is an ultimate goal. So we hope to work. We're just so delighted I'm so delighted that West Sacramento, we always think of like the other county, but we're glad that Maria and several others are interested in joining our chapter so that we will have consistent representation for West Sacramento. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, Maria Grijalva.
Thank you very much. It's another hat that I'm going to wear. For the record, my name is Maria Grijalva, and I am a nonprofit organization, Latino Information and Resource Center. And I wasn't here for the swearing in, so congratulations, Kirina and Bev, to becoming formally city council members. I wanted to, I guess, because I really believe in transparency, that the community or the public ought to know that 95% of the fundraising that Ms. Orozco did was from Sacramento. About $1,500 came from West Sacramento, according to public records. Anyway, this year, I wanted to share with you what my focus is actually for the next 24 months. And that is, my hope is that the city will turn the preschool over to the Washington Unified School District, because cities usually don't run preschools, and I really think that it would be appropriate for the city to turn over whatever we have over to the Washington Unified School District, because we have no business running preschools as a city. The other one, my concern will continue to be the gang injunction, which I believe, if I had my way, would stop today. And the other thing, most importantly, is single-member district representation. Historically, at-large elections have been used to suppress minorities, and it's actually considered a Jim Crow tool. And so single-member district representation is going to be one of my goals, and that's going to be via an initiative. And I just didn't do my homework in time to turn it in for today. And the other most important is term limits. I think 20 years of leadership it's long enough, And so have no idea, but I do wish West Sacramento agrees that term limits, it's time for term limits in West Sacramento. I think 20 years of one leadership is plenty enough. and I think it's time to, give other people a chance. So anyway, thank you and welcome.
All right, thank you. All right, seeing no further public comments, we'll move on to item 1B, council communications and assignments. Any reports? Councilmember Sandin.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Janison. The West Sacramento Flood Control Agency met on December 15th, and we approved a contract for construction management services for the Southport Sacramento River Early Implementation Project, as well as approving Swainson's Hawks mitigation credit purchase agreement for the same project. It was also shared with us that all land acquisitions are complete with the exception of a few condemnation cases. The Age-Friendly Advisory Committee, I don't know if you want to speak on this, Mr. Janison. Do you want me to give the quick report? Okay. Okay. We co-chair that, so and he actually chaired that meeting. We met on December 20th. We received several presentations, including one on mobility alternatives given by Chris Doherty of the West Sac City staff, and AARP activities given by Christina Clem. John Robinson also updated us on work in progress and shared outreach efforts underway. We also discussed branding of the age-friendly effort for the city. We actually looked at some logos and made some comments on those. The Water Resources Association met on January 9th, and we heard what the city of Winters is faced with regarding chromium B compliance, and the cost to handle this is really staggering. Fortunately, we don't have groundwater issues like that to deal with here, but it's really overwhelming for that city. We also heard updates on legislation and regulatory matters. The Water Fix EIR was released on December 22nd, so that was brought to our attention. We continued our discussion on the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act and implementation activities. And then the Yolo County Transportation District met on January 9th as well. The district is celebrating 35 years as an entity, and there are many events and marketing activities planned during the year to mark this 35-year milestone, including a Name the New Bus contest for kids and more visibility of transit in the county. The introduction of the new Connect card, which allows passengers to travel with RT, El Dorado Transit, E-Tran, Folsom Stage Line, Placer County Transit, Roseville Transit, SCT, Link, Yuba Sutter Transit, and our own YOLO bus is underway. So I think that'll make it really easy for folks wanting to traverse and move from one side of our region to another. The YOLO Leaders YED Talk Planning Committee met earlier today and over lunch hour, and our next session will be on the 22nd of March. We're trying to figure out what might be of most interest right now to all of the municipalities, city electeds, as well as the county school board members. And so we thought we would bring forward an idea of looking at how issues at the national level are affecting local issues here. So we suggested discussions about health, infrastructure, environment, and immigration. So more on that to come. And then finally, earlier this evening, the Port Commission met, and we've actually set our meetings to coincide with the first city council meeting of the month, and we extended an exclusive negotiating agreement for purchase and development of the Barge Canal property. That's my report.
Thank you. Councilmember Roscoe.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Johannesson. I attended the Sacramento Regional County Sanitation District meeting on January 11th. At that time, we elected a chair and a vice chair. The new chair of the Regional Sanitation Board is Larry Carr. The board received a presentation and status update on the South Sacramento County Agricultural and Habitat Lands Recycled Water Program, as well as a quarterly report on the Echo Water Project. We heard about progress, expenditures, accomplishments, and upcoming major activities that will, as well as approval of requests during the period of October 2016 through December 2016. According to the presenter, their project has had a few challenges and slowdowns due to a few work-related injuries as well as inclement weather, but the project is on target and on schedule. I attended the Regional Water Authority meeting on January 12, 2017, where we elected members of the Executive Committee as well as a chair and a vice chair. We received an executive director report by John Woodling, as well as regional water planning efforts updates, as well as heard about the 2016 Regional Water Authority financial audit report. On January 13th, at the community center at 10 a.m., there was a Up for West Sacramento Waste Management event, which was a huge success. At that time, I presented along with Mayor Cabalden, and City Council member Bab Sandine was also present to support the grant. We received a check of $500,000 from Waste Management to support sustainability education for early childhood programs, specifically preschoolers. Traditionally, the education has been disseminated in grades that were higher than early childhood age, but this grant would allow us to provide education throughout West Sacramento to early learning programs to teach kids how to recycle, reduce, and reuse. And we got a wonderful presentation from some of the children in one of our early learning programs. There were about half a dozen kids that sang a fantastic song. And we're talking 3, 4, and 5-year-olds who memorized 4 different lyrics. So they did a fantastic job. We had our Up for West Sac Executive Board meeting this morning. We received a director's report to the full body and an update on early learning program activities during the first quarter, as well as an update on the statewide quality rating improvement system. We decided that we want to host a type of an orientation for new members. There was a lot of new members on this board today, and there's a lot of information that we would like to disseminate to the entire group. So that would allow us to work better together once we all have the same information. And we have a new staffing announcement with Tren Bender, who's our new program assistant, and she will join Justine Jimenez with Up for West Sac. And one of the items of note is that Tren Bender is a student who was in our Summer Steps program and is now advanced to becoming full-time staff for Up for West Sac, which is a great success for the Summer Steps program. Finally, on January 10th, 2017, I attended a Prop 47 grant community input meeting here in City Council. There wasn't very many people in attendance, but we received presentations from Chris Bulkley from the Yolo County District Attorney's Office, as well as Tracy, well, I can't recall the second person who gave our presentation. I believe it was Tracy Dickinson. But as everybody knows, or many people know, Prop 47 was a 2014 ballot initiative passed by the California voters and one of the largest criminal reform efforts to reduce prison population. There are some funds that may be available to the county to provide services to folks who meet a particular set of criteria. We received a presentation about restorative justice models such as neighborhood court, Prop 47 diversion, and mental health court. And from what I understand, Yolo County is looking to apply for grant funding to replicate or use the models that are currently in place that would make folks who are diversion eligible, meaning over the age of 18, no gang relations, no 290 registration or prior strike offenses, to be eligible for substance abuse and mental health services. They are accepting comment from the community. You should direct your comments and feedback to Nicole, Nikole Kirkcaldy, and she is with the Yolo County Health and Human Services Agency. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that report. I just have the one, it was in the talk about Councilmember Sandine's report on the aging, our age-friendly commission. And so the goal of that committee is going to create an action plan that will be coming out later in the year. And what's been happening is a number of different surveys have gone out to community members in a number of different varieties. And there's been some discussion about whether they're really, they're not really scientific surveys. I think there's one that may be more scientific than the rest, but a lot of them are, phone calls and what do you think is the main issue, affecting your lives. And these are folks that are aging or have mobility issues. And so what's coming out of this is we're kind of getting an idea of what the gaps are, in helping folks stay active longer, more community engagement, and just kind of helping develop what this action plan is going to be for aging. So it's actually a group is fairly well attended, good attendance at the group, and it looks like we're making good progress toward that goal. All right, thank you. All right, so going on to item 1C. We just have on the council assignments, we just have the replacing Councilmember Sandine and I with the yellow housing. I think that the balance remained the same, I think, from our last meeting. And also on the board and commission appointments, you all received a copy of the appointment list by the mayor, and this is pursuant to the municipal code, that he has presented, and I know, I think everyone on this council has had some input on these board and commission members. Members for each of the board and commissions, it looks like there's a couple of vacancies. So what I can do is, if there are any questions or comments on this list, I'm glad to entertain that. Other than that, I think it's our task here would be to ratify the mayor's prospective appointments. And if there's a motion, to entertain that.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Yeah, I appreciate the mayor's receiving our input on these commissions, and thank everyone who has served on these commissions, and wish everyone well, and thank the people who are going to serve on these commissions. Thank them for their service, and with that, I'll make the motion to approve the recommended assignments.
Second.
We have a motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that motion passes. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I'm
Yes.
just wondering if those appointments would be posted, so that rather than read them all through, how they'll be communicated out. We don't have to answer that now, I just want to make sure there's a mechanism to communicate those.
And we could also provide them on highlights as well.
That's fine. I just want to make sure that, yeah, I know we have a bunch of new commission members that we've formally appointed tonight, and to make sure we have.
And we'll
they
make
get
sure the
contacted.
clerk will notify them
Okay.
as well.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Ledesma. All right, moving on to consent agenda items 2 through 11. Are there any items any council members would like to pull for separate discussion?
Mr. Johansson, I have a brief or a small correction to make on item 11, the minutes.
Okay,
I'd like to pull off items 3, 5, and 6, please.
okay. Councilmember Roscoe, any?
I would like item 5.
Item 5, okay, and I would, item 3. So it looks like we have 3, 5, 6, and a comment or correction on 11. All right, so. All right, so item number 3 is consideration of resolution 17-6 authorizing the city manager to continue pre-construction activities for the Grand Casey Street project and finding of compliance with CEQA. Mr. Huerta, how you doing?
Good evening. Good, thank you.
All right, so am I the only one who pulled this item?
No, I did as well.
Okay,
So
Councilmember Ledesma.
thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. And thank you, Mr. Huerta, for coming up. Yeah, I think I need a little bit of catching up on this issue. I know a question came up earlier today around making sure there was coordination with some of the utilities and railroad folks that were involved. I think we got that coordinated, and that was well done. So I want to make sure I get that update, that indeed we did kind of make sure we.
So we had a diagnostic meeting on December 1st to review the initial design drawings for the proposed extension of Grand Street and construction of Casey Street. The diagnostic meeting was held with Union Pacific Railroad, the port manager, the Public Utilities Commission staff, city staff, and a consultant engineer. Prior to that December 1st meeting, we also held an informal meeting with Union Pacific Railroad and Sierra Northern Railroad, their operations manager, to discuss the scope of the project and to get initial feedback on any potential disruption to their operations. So we have kept in touch with all of the parties involved as we're moving forward with the project. The diagnostic meeting that was held on December 1st is just the first step in the application process for the new crossing. So we will be holding several other meetings as we go along in design of the project and the application phase.
Okay. And then a secondary, thank you for that update. I just want to make sure we are making sure we're talking to all the partners involved in this project. I know this project has been in the works for some time because of Delta Lane, or West Gateway Place as it's called now, and how we're aligned this street. But I just, and you can clarify this, but one thing caught my eye in terms of what is occurring in this, and I know I'm supportive of the motion as it stands, of the resolution that granting the city manager the ability to continue working on this, because we have been working on it for a while. But there's a portion in here that talks about the establishment of a quiet zone and maybe some changing of kind of planning around to make sure the grading happens right because of some neighbor concerns. And while I'm sensitive to that, I also want to make sure the process includes, if there's a change in scope or that those things that may happen that may differ from how we originally thought of it are brought back to either us or the Planning Commission, whatever is appropriate, if that's in scope. I'm just reminded of what we have learned in previous years, especially with kind of the lighting issue with the street lights and stoplights on Jefferson Boulevard, how ministerial actions based on one limited constituency's feedback changed the entire fabric. And I'm just cautious when I see a neighborhood said something and something administratively happens in the scope of something else. It seems, based on the surface of it, establishing a quiet zone because of what's happening along the rail yard does seem the right thing to do, but I want to put that word of caution out there to staff as we move forward on these types of projects, this one specifically. If there's a change in scope or an alternative that's being considered that we had not considered before, that's something I'm just mindful of.
We are planning to go to the commissions, the Housing Advisory Commission to be specific, and any other ones that may need to hear a presentation as we move forward. The item that was included in the scope of work is to explore the possibility of establishing a quiet zone. Again, we are just at the initial stages of this, and this particular item actually came to be after our diagnostic meeting. So it's certainly not a driving factor of the project. The project is a larger scope on its
Right.
own. So this was something that would have to be approved and vetted with Public Utilities Commission, with Union Pacific Railroad, Sierra Northern, the port. It is a fairly prescriptive process that has to be followed with Public Utility Commission and all the affected parties.
Okay. Thank you.
Just a quick comment. So on the rail location, or relocation, or redesign in this area, what are the dynamics with that and the potential movement of those tracks to the west side? I guess the question is, if we're looking at putting a lot of money into infrastructure that's going to be taken up in the event that we move all the tracks to the west side, what do you see? Is there any interaction, or really we don't really have much of a choice at this point?
As part of the design, we are looking into using ways that are going to be more cost-effective. If we do have to remove some of the work that we're going to be doing in terms of the new railroad crossing, because you're right, there is a switch that will have to be moved. There is some short line rail that will have to be eliminated, and obviously establishing the new railroad crossing. So some of the materials that would be used, we are going to be looking, our engineering consultant is going to be looking at to make sure that they're cost-effective if we do have to remove those, so they're not permanent in nature. If some of those can be temporary in nature, so that in the future, if the rail does go away, the cost to build those initially is going to be the least expensive. So it is a consideration that we are looking into and that we have directed our consultant to look into.
Great. Thank you very much. All right, any further questions on this item? All right, thank you. All right, moving on to item number 5. This is consideration of barn tenant improvements and operations. Ms. Jacobson. Good evening.
I did as well, so I'll
Want to go ahead?
thank you. Hi, Katie, how are you? Thanks for the update, I thought we'd take the opportunity to pull this off and maybe talk through some of the changes that are being proposed as far as the barn is concerned. Obviously, I think some of this got out already through the press, but it's worthy. I'm excited about the changes that are being made, but I do have some questions, but if you want to maybe walk through a few of the changes to make sure everyone's clear. Thank you.
Is the mic on?
Is it on?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
This item is a brief informational update on the barn proposed tenant improvements to support the operations of Drake's Brewing. As you are aware, at the time the barn transaction agreements were executed between the city and Smart Growth investors, the barn was under design and there was no operator at that time. So the design intent was to create a flexible event space, a beautiful grand open space area that was amenitized on our riverfront. However, it was, as I say, a performance event venue, and the food service would be limited and was planned to be a walk-up window. In July of 2016, Drake's Brewing was selected by Smart Growth investors to operate the barn venue, and since then, Drake's has been designing the tenant improvements to support their operations at the site. Drake's anticipates being open from 8 for coffee and dinner service until 10 or 11 during the weekdays, and then until 1 o'clock at night on weekends. Nick. So this is a graphic of the modifications being proposed by Drake's. The proposed improvements are designed to support a full-service wood-fired pizza restaurant with 34 beers on tap, an open-air beer garden featuring up to 10 gas fire pits with Adirondack seating and regular live music. The North Pod is a full-service restaurant with indoor seating, and the other pod interior will be a second indoor bar with a warming hut to support operations during cold weather months. An additional 1,500 square foot building is being added, and there'll be an area to the south of the venue on Smart Growth private property that will be improved with hardscape to allow for food truck parking and access, and those food trucks are intended to be a semi-permanent feature of the venue. Next slide. This is an alternative perspective of the plans. As you can see, the new building, which includes restrooms, the restroom proximity is about 10 feet from the interior restaurant pod. And this graphic also shows a somewhat clearer perspective of how the paving areas are being modified. There's existing grass paver areas, and those are now being raised and mounded, and they're going to place trees in them. And they also will serve a dual function as seating, so they can add additional tables surrounding these areas. They're also installing a new curvilinear metal slated fence that will extend partially to surround the new building and provide screening for the on-site delivery trucks and back of house. And the shape of this curvilinear fence is really being designed to somewhat mirror the design of the main barn structure. Most of the seating and tables will not be fixed, they'll be movable. However, some of the tables, the benches, the counters, and the gas fire pits will be fixed in place. Next slide. So this graphic provides detail on the new building. A larger cooler area was needed by Drake's for storage of all their beer kegs. This proposed tenant improvement is doubling the amount of restrooms. The prior plan had 6 restrooms. This new building will allow us to double the number of restrooms to 12. It also supports back-of-house operations and deliveries, as you can see, and provides an additional open outdoor bar with seating. The proposed screening that you could see on the other graphics not only screens the back of house, but it will allow some screened area for the Center for Land-Based Learning to use. They have planned to put urban gardens on either side of the barn structure, so this will allow some screened lay-down space for them if that's required with their operations. The next steps are for final plans to move through design review approval, which is vested with the Community Development Director by the Bridge District Specific Plan. There are still some issues that are being discussed between staff, the developer, and Drake's, and those issues will have to be resolved and addressed before final approval. Overall, the selection of a permanent year-round restaurant, beer garden, coffee operator provides more activation for the Riverwalk year-round than the original plan did, which was just, as I said, an event venue with walk-up food service. These additional amenities support the city's vision to create a grand, beautiful, amenitized, open public space on the river that promotes community and promotes recreational enjoyment of our river. That concludes my presentation. I believe Stephen J. Cox is here representing the barn developer in the audience tonight as well, if you had any questions of their team.
Great, thank you. Questions, comments? Yes, Councilmember
Yes.
Roscoe.
Thank you for your presentation, Ms. Jacobson.
Sure.
Couple questions. You had mentioned that in the report that it'd be an open bar and a second indoor bar. Would this be exclusively beer, or is this something that would expand to hard liquor and or other alcohols?
My understanding right now is it's a beer wine license that they're operating under, but I believe that they're considering that the indoor bar could possibly serve mixed drinks, but Stephen could probably better address that.
Hi, Stephen J. Cox with Fulcrum. The answer to the question is that the intention presently is for beer and wine. The reason for the increase in numbers of serving points on the barn site was a response to, the direct, I'm sorry, yeah. The lines. As we saw last season with off-the-grids activation of the barn and the tremendous interest that the community had taken in it as a serving site, Drake's observed and then tailored their plan to produce several serving points on the premises, but ones that, instead of being improvised, that had to be brought out and set up every week or every day, ones that were permanent in nature. That's why there are, in fact, two bars, so to speak, on the premises.
Thank you. I also noticed, and I like the improvements and the optics that you provided us. One of the things that, it's very important, as you mentioned in your report, Ms. Jacobson, is that this is a community and recreational enjoyment location. And, West Sacramento being a family city, one of my, priorities is to ensure that if we have a public venue such as the barn, that there are kid-friendly activities, or at least open space. It's very hard, I imagine, aesthetically, to have permanent structures there for children to enjoy. However, will there be other activities, such as an open picnic space or cornhole or any other types of activities that parents can bring and know that their children would be actively engaged in?
This point's been openly discussed between Fulcrum, or Smoke Growth Investors in this case, and Drake's. The character of this riverfront activation as being a family-friendly experience is paramount. And everyone is committed to seeing that happen. In terms of specific discussions about amenities that are specifically kid-friendly, that hasn't come into view yet. But in terms of the table arrangements, in terms of the de-emphasis of alcohol as the experience, in terms of the open space, it is very much part of the idea that we would be trying to continue and nurture the kind of audiences that the barn has attracted to date, including the audiences in some, not simply the crowd that is there at the barn on Friday night for Off the Grid at 9:30, but the crowd that's there at 6 o'clock, the crowd that arrived during the farmer's market. The goal is to accommodate everyone in the community.
Thank you.
Councilmember Liz?
Thank you, and thank you, Katie, for the presentation, and I think, as I said, the public has already gotten a glimpse of it, and at least through the agenda item, and it is exciting to see it kind of moving forward, and I know people have looked forward to Drake's as being another option for food and beverage in the area. Couldn't agree more with my colleague, Councilmember Orozco, around keeping the family-oriented events in sight. The other issue I did want to bring up, but it has been important, especially going through our first, in a very hard winter, wet winter season, is how can we keep it activated? And with it sort of just as a venue in the past, since we opened in June, it's shown its limitation in that so far. And that my ask is that between our city, work with Fulcrum, our partner in this, during the construction period, I'm assuming that a large part of it will be cut off from being usable. But during this time that's been open, it's become an icon on the riverfront, space hard to ignore. And I would just urge you to look for ways that we can keep it activated even when construction is going on. I think we have a really important season coming, that is the spring, summer, when families are out starting to get on their bicycles in the spring days. And it's always been that place we look to kind of maybe have a stop and take in some shade, or if there was something there to do. There's still that opportunity, and if we can maximize that time, even when construction is going on for the TIs or for the expansion of the facility, the restroom facility, which is necessary, as we saw. I just urge you to please try to find some opportunity to do that. It's important that we kind of keep that going.
Yeah. If I could comment on that, you'll be pleased to know, in terms of the level of activation that we saw in the last season, we're aiming to do no less even while Drake's is under construction. For example, while it's not quite yet firm, the plans are that Off the Grid would begin activating the site in spring at some point. Also, as we know, the West Sacramento Farmers Market is going to be at the barn on Thursdays beginning in late May. The approach to preparing the site and putting the fence in place so that construction can occur is being done in a way that it won't block or prohibit these sorts of activations to happen at the site. So when the weather turns fine, I expect that we'll be able to all enjoy the barn, even though the interior will be under construction.
Terrific. Thank you, Stephen.
Yes, Councilmember Cindy.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I just have a quick question. In the staff report, there's a mention about having to revisit perhaps the agreement with the city to have 10 events, given the Drake's as operator. I just was wondering what the tenor and what that was meant.
So, well, the agreements between the city and the developer
Right.
are passed through to Drake. So Drake's has full knowledge that the city has these 10 events that are dedicated to it. We, as a city, just hadn't really thought about some events that the city might have, like a festival, like Earth Festival or something, totally compatible with having Drake's operating at the same time. Other events like State of the City, we hadn't really thought through, well, how would that be? Would we literally have, would Drake still be operating, or would we have them not operate at all and be controlling the interior spaces? So we just need to have further dialogue about what's best for the city in that regard, in terms of making sure all the parties have clarity.
Okay, fair enough. Thanks.
Yeah, just a couple quick questions. Yeah, I'm really excited about this particular activation. I think the restaurant is going to be great, and appreciate the coffee in the morning. I think that we'll have some folks visiting there as well, so we'll see a lot more activity, which is good, which leads to the other issue of security. As we start to have more and more hardscape outside, fire pits outside, I know the restaurant will be open till 1 o'clock. It's probably not every night, but on the weekends. So you're going to have more issues of potential vandalism? Is that covered, or?
That issue was brought up during the first project review committee meeting, and some Drake's and the developer did respond that, during operating hours, their personnel will be in charge of security when it's closed. Because of the open space nature of it and the public easement, we still need to talk through whether or not the security during all closing hours will be in place, and that is a condition that we're in dialogue with the developer about.
Yeah, thank you. Further questions or comments? All right, thank you both. All right, moving on to item number 6. This is consideration of agreement with Janet Zweig LLC to develop Mill Street Pier, interpret development construction plans. Councilmember Ledesma.
Thank you. And again, Katie, I think an opportunity here to bring out the work being done at Mill Street Pier, and frankly, reading through it a little bit of illuminating the public on the interpretive element that we're contemplating. I know when this grant was originally, we won this grant back in, I think it was 2015, right? 2016, early.
This was a 2016
Yeah.
award.
Obviously it got us to the point where we can make the rehab the pier, and then we can, adding the interpretive element has come, and I'm wondering if you can just expand a little bit upon what the thought process or the kind of what you envision on this side as we move forward into it.
So our grant proposal describes generally that part of our improvements would be an interpretive element. So we had gotten an idea from a prior proposal that was received by the city for the Bridge District Public Art solicitation process. There was a piece of it that was an interpretive element, and talking with the designer of that, her focus of her work recently is on environmental conditions. And so, and she partners with scientists to do interactive elements that educate about environmental conditions. So her concept is to focus on creating something that will, in fact, interact with some element of nature. But she has to partner with scientists. We want to she and the city would like to make this of the pier. It has to be within our footprint. It has to be on area that we have leased from the state. And it has to be something we can permit. We'll have to get efficient wildlife stream bed alteration permit. And we have to look at one of the areas of interest of the old pilings are very beautiful and they're very intriguing to people. So that's an element we would love to use in terms of this work, but until we've done real feasibility from an engineering side and a permitting side, we don't have a proposal. So this contract is for her to develop and evolve a proposal, which will then be designed, and then we would come back to you prior to it being bid.
And that's kind of what I was getting at is, so we don't quite have, but we kind of have what's in the basic elements, what she's thinking, or from a design, and what we want to highlight, but there's not, until she gets through understanding what we can do, that's when she'll be able to articulate that?
Exactly.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I understood where we were. And that would go back to us, would it go back to the Arts Commission once it is?
Once the city and the designer have evolved it into a concept and we think it's feasible, then we'll be in front of the Arts Commission first thing, and then we'll also bring it back in front of you.
Yeah, even knowing what you're thinking and what the designer is thinking is helpful, because this was a little gem that was hidden off the southern side of the river, just right up the roof in the barn. And if anybody has seen it lately, it's beautiful. It's really starting to articulate that riverfront, and anything we can add to it as a feature of what you can experience on the waterfront is welcome. I mean, just this, it's an exciting piece of artwork into itself, just with the pier itself.
Yes.
And so as much, when we get to that point, I look forward to seeing it come back. So thank you.
Great, thanks.
All right, any questions or comments? All right, thank you, Ms. Jacobson. All right, moving on to item number 11. This is the minutes. Councilmember Sandin.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Johansson. I'd like to offer a correction for under entry number 4. I believe that because Mayor Cabaldan was actually chairing the meeting, I believe that Councilmember Orozco actually made the motion, which I seconded for you to serve as Mayor Pro Tem. So I think that correction just needs to be made.
All right,
Simple.
thank you.
Simple
All right.
correction.
So that is noted. All right, so we've discussed all the consent items. Is there a motion on consent?
I'll move the approval of the consent agenda
With that correction,
with that correction. Thank you.
I'll second that.
Okay, you have a motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Motion passes. Thank you. All right, to item 12 on the regular agenda, consideration of first reading of ordinance 17-2, amending chapter 18 or 8.16 of the municipal code regarding smoking. There she is.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem Ledesma and members of the City Council. I'm back before you tonight on this item regarding amending the municipal code regarding smoking. We did a workshop back in November and brought the item basically to address smoke-free parks and recreation areas, but then to also make some other minor amendments to the ordinance to clean it up. There's some inconsistencies from some provisions being preempted, some provisions being carried over from the county, from prior to incorporation, and then to also address use of smoking marijuana and e-cigarettes. So, as we mentioned during the workshop, there is state law that is in place that restricts smoking in parks, but it's only within 25 feet of playgrounds, and there's lots of parks in the city that don't have playground areas and recreational areas. So the proposed ordinance for the ordinance proposed for first reading, it addresses banning smoking in all parks and recreation areas. It also extends that prohibition to city facilities, except in designated smoking areas. The ordinance also would prohibit disposal of smoking-related waste within those same areas, except in designated waste disposal containers. And like I mentioned, it also includes within the definition of smoking e-cigarettes and smoking of marijuana. So the ordinance is attached as attachment 3, the proposed ordinance. There's also a red line version of the prior ordinance with comparing the prior ordinance to the currently proposed amended ordinance. And happy to answer any questions.
All right, any questions or comments on this issue?
I do.
Yes, Councilmember Orozco.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Johansson. Ms. Berlin, I was reading in the analysis that the prohibition on smoking at the facilities includes a facility and public property on which it's located, extending to and including parking lots and the adjacent public sidewalk. Is that correct?
That's correct.
If there were, hypothetically speaking, a city employee who smokes cigarettes and went to his or her vehicle during lunch break or during, any kind of break to have a cigarette, would they be in non-compliance with this ordinance?
They would, but the ordinance does allow for locating designated smoking areas, and most, if not all, current city facilities already have these areas that staff are familiar with and have been using.
And then, with respect to penalties, I understand that it was reduced from a misdemeanor to an infraction. Is that correct?
That was one of the inconsistencies in the prior ordinance, or the current version of the ordinance. There was some carryover from the county code that regulated smoking on port property that that said a violation was a misdemeanor. That provision actually has been preempted for a number of years already, based on another amendment to the code. That's why it was a little bit confusing the way that the ordinance is currently presented. So we cleaned that up a bit and just left in the other enforcement provision that was also in the ordinance that makes it an infraction to violate the new version of the ordinance.
And are there any, will it be delineated whether or not the district attorney or any other law enforcement agency will have an enhanced penalty for people who are repeat offenders?
Well, right now, it refers to violations are under section 1.1203 and 1.1204, I believe, of the municipal code. And under 1.12030, it's the first violation is a $100 fine, and the second violation is a $200 fine, and each additional violation within 1 year is a $500 fine. So there is increasing penalties for multiple violations.
Well, I'm familiar in Sacramento County, for example, in the K Street corridor, if there are offenders, for example, who have been caught on multiple occasions selling controlled substances, that they can be banned from that area, doing any type of activity in that area for up to a particular amount of time. In this case, if we're having, say, for example, parks, and there's somebody who's repeatedly smoking in the presence of children or other people who are enjoying that public amenity, I guess one of my questions would be, would our district attorney or law enforcement agency, I mean, you could fine people until you're blue in the face, but if they're not, obeying the ordinance, and our ultimate goal is for public safety, I wonder if that's another reasonable possibility.
I think under section 1.12040, that there does allow some additional enforcement options for continued violation. So that is a possibility, I believe. I don't think the code speaks to it specifically, but it is something that we could always bring up with law enforcement and see how we can, if it ends up being necessary, how we can deal with that.
Excellent, thank you.
I would add, I think it does not currently provide that. 040 allows that each day is a new continuing violation, but we don't currently have a provision in like the one you're describing, but that's certainly something that we could look at.
Well, in certain circumstances where people are disobeying the law or not respecting the laws that we put into place, there should be some type of alternative. If they're not able to pay, then they should be able to do community service and pick up cigarette butts or something likewise in order to redeem their, to contribute back.
I think that's an appropriate conversation to have with the district attorney's office, is what kind of alternative sentencing arrangements, if they need anything in the code to allow them to do that.
Thank you.
Questions, comments?
Yeah, just a quick comment, and thank you, Amanda, for bringing this back to us. I think it certainly does accomplish what we set out to do, which was to make sure we clean up and have consistent rules around smoking, especially in the evolving environment we have around what people actually smoke. I mean, we took great pains to make sure we captured electronic devices as well as marijuana, other things. And I understand because I have family members who smoke, and it's a convenient inconvenience, or there's maybe the thought that we're ostracizing those people. But I hope they don't feel that way, because it is about health and human services of the people who use the space constantly, and I think that's an important element that I want to make sure is clear, and it is important, whether it's at a park or a public facility like here, where people are going in and out, and that they're sure that there's not any sort of health hazard with secondhand smoke or otherwise. So again, it's a good effort to make sure we have a consistent ordinance that captures this. So I appreciate the work on this.
And if I might add, permission of the Mayor Pro Tem, I think that communication with the community is going to be key on this and making sure that signage is available. So if people know that they, have the obligation to obey the law and where it is that the lines are drawn, so that people aren't in non-compliance when they don't know.
Yeah, agreed.
Just one or two questions. So getting back to Councilmember Roscoe's comments on the fine, I don't know if you would be able to answer this, but I'm kind of interested too in the mechanics of how this would work. Someone would be in violation of this particular ordinance, they would get ticketed. What the mechanics are behind that, is it, going to Woodland to show up at traffic court or one of the other minor courts, or is it just paying the fine? If there's going to be, that's just the base fine, and there's going to be all the county administrative, so this $100 fine could turn into be $500 just because of the add-on. So I don't know if it's all that, we know all that at this point, the mechanism. How would a cite occur? Who would go out and, actually write the ticket?
Yeah, according to the way it's written, it can be referred to code enforcement or to law enforcement. So it's my understanding that there would be, however, the section, chapter 1.12030 is enforced, I'm not sure if that's with writing tickets or giving some other sort of citation, but it's following the regular code, the enforcement provisions in the municipal code. So,
And who would write the citations? And
the officer, I believe that would
Bill
approach
Police, PD, code enforcement,
yeah, whoever's been
citizens?
notified. Citizens can file a complaint under the chapter and give the complaint to a code enforcement officer, community development department, or a police officer.
And then that would go through the regular enforcement channel then?
Right.
Okay. Further questions or comments? All right, thank you. All right, thank you. All right, so this item, what is the action we're looking for? Okay, so do we have a requested action? Is there a motion on this?
So moved.
All right, and is this the recommended action? So what is the motion need?
To waive the first reading and, to waive the first reading and read by title and number, ordinance 17-2 of the city of West Sacramento, amending chapter 8.16 of the code.
All right, and is that directing the staff to return for second reading adoption of ordinance February?
Yes, it is.
All right,
I'll second.
all right, motion's made and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, hearing none, that motion passes, thank you. All right, on to item 13. And this is a presentation and discussion of first reading of ordinance 17-1, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of West Sacramento amending municipal code section 10.04.060A and chapter 10.24 concerning parking, and adding chapter 10.226 concerning parking meters. Mr. Doherty.
Good evening,
Evening.
Mayor Pro Tem and members of the City Council. Chris Doherty with the Public Works Department. As was stated, the item before you is the first reading of ordinance 17-1, which amends chapter 10 of the municipal code in relation to parking. On December 14th, the last council meeting, council heard a workshop on parking meters in the Bridge District. During that workshop, council supported staff's recommendation to pursue the installation of parking meters, especially the second version of the pay and display type meters that the city of Sacramento uses throughout the Bridge District. Council also reviewed draft municipal code language in Chapter 10 that provides the city the authority to install and to operate those parking meters, as well as gives some cleanup language for some of our parking tickets and refers to some of our administrative policies. That version, the final version is in front of you now. Additionally, the version in front of you that was handed to you later on this evening has two options in there in relation to timed parking.
We had a late-breaking request from a property owner in the Bridge District to want to discuss this further. The option in front of you is around the hour-long time to vacate the parking spot before returning. What we've done is provide the option to remove that or keep that in there, which gives us the time between now and the second reading to have that discussion with the property owner and to bring you back a final product at the second reading, without delaying the project overall to install meters by the end of March, as we've promised council we would do. And with that, I will be returning, this item will come back to council for a second reading in February, along with a lengthier discussion on the procurement of the parking meters and the planning of their location where they would go. At this point, this concludes my presentation, and I'm available for questions you may have.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Councilmember Sandin.
Thank you. I just have a quick question. We're putting the ordinance in place so that we can actually set up the parking meter system in the Bridge District, but the ordinance covers the Bridge District, Washington, and the Civic Center District.
Correct.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that.
For future expansion, we wanted to make sure that we did this once.
Right. But that doesn't mean, just because the ordinance is in place, doesn't mean that the meters are going to be there the first day. They're all going to be all throughout the city.
Correct.
Or in those areas, okay.
The first phase that we are planning at this point was still projected for the Bridge District only.
Okay, thanks.
Councilmember Roscoe.
Thank you. So this is a system where, and correct me if I'm wrong, where the customer, the person that's parking their car, would go up to a machine, put their currency or their credit card into the machine, and they would get a ticket or some type of card that they would place either on the dashboard or on a window. Is that correct?
The machines we are looking at, you would not need to get a printed ticket and go back to your car. You would come in and input your license plate, and you'd just see the machine one time, and you can go off to your destination. It does not need a particular ticket in the car. There would be no visual marking in the car that you've paid the parking. Our parking enforcement, as it sits currently, will review the license plates and will know who is paid and who is not.
I noticed in section 10.26.080 that on the last sentence of section A, it says failure to place the parking receipt on the vehicle dashboard as prescribed shall constitute a violation of this title. That's why I got that, but that's fair. So the person just has to remember then when the amount of time that they've paid for the car, because there's not going to be, the meter's not going to be right by their car, is that correct?
Correct. We will also have the ability to deploy the Park Mobile application, so you could get that notified on your phone as well if you're coming close to when that parking meter is going to be expiring.
And I know it's still to be determined, but the distance between the kiosk where you pay and the location of your car, I know, like, for example, in downtown Sacramento, you get it, maybe 2 per block. My concern is, for those who might be limited in their mobility, either by age or disability or otherwise, hypothetically speaking, you park your car, you have to walk over to the machine. What if, in fact, that machine is non-operable at the time, and then they have to move their car or find another place that's nearby in order to pay for their parking? Will there be ample availability of these machines?
There should be, we're projecting about 10 machines throughout the Bridge District right now, mostly focused around the activity center and then sparsely populated out as they go out, where there's where there's less development. We'll be adding machines as development increases. The beauty of these machines too is that you can input that information from any machine in the district, regardless of where your car is. So you can go to the most convenient machine and pay for that parking.
And then you had mentioned earlier, though, a 1 hour amount of time that someone has to vacate and then before they can return and park.
Correct.
And can you explain more about that? Because I flagged that as well, because I thought, normally folks won't have as much of a problem if they could at least just move it around somewhere else in the district, even if it's not exactly in that same place or nearby, but.
So that 1 hour was to meet the request that council had given to not have vehicles be able to move throughout the district repeatedly, kind of upskating the time limit parking regulations that we have in there. The idea is the 1 hour parking still provide, or the 1 hour gap still provides that kind of balance for multiple trips to the Bridge District per day, but still provides to adhere to the time limit parking that we're putting in place on the street. We will also, with the Weyerhaeuser lot or the parking lot on Fifth and Bridge, have the availability for longer-term parking if they need to. So there will be options for that kind of parking in the district that would not be a onerous walk away if they want to stay there for longer.
Thank you.
Sure.
If I may, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, that was exactly my question, because I think it's important for the public to understand in context of our plans to have longer-term parking, not just at the Weyerhaeuser site in the short term, but as we begin to grow, either with the River's Edge or whatever else, the anticipation of structured parking or whatever else would be along with it. So, and you have to anticipate, too, that you would need that when streetcars here, whatever else, the ability that you could stay there and get around via the streetcar. So I think it's a great solution, and I totally understand where you're coming from. It may be a little off-putting because we are used to kind of space hopping in districts, but hopefully this will, having that long-term parking available solves that.
The overall goal of street parking will be to really serve the kind of commercial street-level uses that'll be there, and will act as more short-term parking. The idea is to balance the needs of all the users in the district throughout our parking assets.
Okay, thank you. Questions, comments? No? All right, thank you very much. So it looks like, there's an action item here, and it looks like staff is presenting this potential delineation of this language as an option. Is that my understanding of what the request is?
The optional sections in what was the handout that was given to you tonight
Right.
are highlighted in yellow.
Okay.
And one omits the hour-long vacation of the parking space in 10.24.120, and also in 10.26.090.
Okay, so the motion would be including those potential option changes.
May I ask one more small question? This is going to get back in front of the Transportation Committee. I know I read in the staff report, just timing didn't work out.
Yeah, our goal is to take it to the next Transmission Mobility Infrastructure Commission, which we expect to be in March.
Okay.
The January Commission did not have commissioners at the time, and so it was not held.
Okay, and I might recommend, I'm not sure if you have, I see our new chamber president hiding in the back. I think she's sick today, so kudos to her for coming out. But again, the intent of this is, as you said, is to service all, not just businesses and residents today, but the ones we anticipate coming in the future. So I want to make sure we have time to kind of walk through it with the chamber as they set their agenda for the year. They understand where we're going and for the Bridge District and beyond, because I think we're already starting to see parking issues up in the Washington neighborhood with the success of Ferguson Brew. So again, it's just another opportunity for us to kind of get that message out there and as we move forward.
Of course.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Further questions or comments? All right, is there a motion?
I'll move the recommended action.
I second.
Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you. All right, moving on to council calendar.
Good evening again. We have one item that might be of interest to you all. On January 31st, which is a Tuesday, at 10 a.m. in the Galleria will be the 2016 Employee Service Awards. And that's all for me.
Thank you. City manager report?
Just briefly, tonight, the Sacramento Valley Association of Planners honored the barn project. So Phil Wright didn't have a budget item, so Phil is representing the city, and I assume somebody from Fulcrum is there at APA collecting that award as a local vision project. And also, I just want to say, we had another storm today, but last week we had a major test of our system. Our public works staff did just a great job working with both our police and fire personnel, and we didn't have any local flooding, and everything was pretty smooth despite the challenge of the storm. And we're having another one today and tomorrow, and I'm sure we'll get through that as well.
Thank you very much. City attorney report? All right, any staff direction from city council members? All right, none, seeing none. And any future agenda item requests by council?
No, I did want to bring up, if I may, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, bring up on the February 15th meeting, I'm scheduled not to be here. Just to put that in your planning. If things change, I will certainly let you know, as I did tonight.
All right, thank you very much. Questions or comments? Is there a motion to adjourn? We have a motion? We have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Hearing opposed? Hearing none? Motion passes. We're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.